So can we talk about? Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, you are going to call the meeting to order.
Like to call the meeting in order. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
No, I don't think you need to do that.
Okay, meeting in order.
You just call the meeting to order,
Meeting in order.
Mr. Vice President, and you're good to go.
All right, we'll do a roll call. Bowen,
Present.
Here.
Donahue, Elliott. Here. Bird,
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Arkle. Here.
I was late too.
Oh, Nowacki.
Sir, you're early.
That's right. Thank you, Scott. Billy.
Here.
And Raver.
Yeah, Scott said you had 2 more minutes to
That's
go
right.
on Raver time.
I like Raver time.
Yeah. Okay, minutes, Mr. President?
Is everybody have a chance to review the minutes? Yeah, sure. Is there any discussion on them? All those in favor of approving minutes?
I need a motion.
Oh, I'd like to need a motion to approve the minutes. So moved. All those in favor?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yeah, carried.
Okay, new business.
Okay, actually, if you don't mind,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman of the committee, I'll go ahead and take it away because I would like to introduce our guest speaker and provide a little context. So hi, Barbara. For the newer members of our committee, we did this more frequently before COVID, where we would bring folks in and have educational sessions. And those types of sessions would relate to, helping you better understand or evaluate improvement project applications as they come through, or just have a better understanding of the areas that you are interested in, the Boise foothills and the Boise River corridor and natural landscapes. And it is along that vein that we have invited Barbara here today. And I'm gonna give a short bio from what I remember, because I forgot to ask you for a bio.
I was going to have a little bit of intro. That is the intro too, so.
Okay, well, Barbara goes kind of way back with Boise and left us for a time to work at the Jepson Herbarium, which for you plant nerds out there is like the place to be if you want to be a botanist. And Barbara has, she's a Boise native. She's got family in the area. She has come back to us and has begun to describe new species of plants that are local and endemic. She does rare and local flower talks and leads hikes and just tries her best to share her knowledge with anybody who might be interested. And so today, Barbara is going to speak with us about local plants, native local plants and some rare plants, I'm assuming. And so take it away, Barbara. We're happy to have you and welcome.
Okay, well, thank you very much for allowing me to present to your group. I have put together a PowerPoint, so if I can share the screen, it looks like I can. I'll get going so I can make sure I make it through what I want to do within my allotted time frame. Okay, so basically, Treasures of the Boise Front is the title that I've been using for this. I like Treasure Valley as well as the Treasures play. And as Sarah already mentioned, I am a Boise native, born and raised here, cut my teeth on the local flora, ended up becoming a professional botanist, mostly in Western North American floristics and taxonomy. I've published nearly about 40 new plants, which may sound interesting. Point out that there's actually about 60 new plants per year published in North America, 2/3 from Western North America. So it's basically an ongoing thing. We are still learning the flora. I returned to Boise, took early retirement in 2005, picked up on the Boise flora, which I've been working on basically since a grad student in the undergrad in the 1970s. And it became my primary project during the pandemic. Let's see. So are you seeing this okay?
Yes.
Okay, just occurred to me to check. So I also want to emphasize that this kind of work isn't just data mining and compilation. I mean, to do it the way that I've been taught to do it, it's original research. I mean, it's mostly thousands of hours of on-the-ground surveys, making species lists or bearing collections, original photos, and pointing out that deleting erroneous previous reports is as important as what species to include, and that can take a lot of time to go through. When there's herbarium specimens at Boise State or C of I for some of these reports, you can check to see if they're correctly identified or if they actually are possible additions. And I've been doing this recently. Most of them turn out to be either out of the area or incorrect. And incorrect, it's not, that big of a deal. It's par for the course. I correct some of my own early identifications. Identification is actually sometimes putting a name on things as a moving target because there's so many new information coming in on taxonomy. I use multiple keys, floras, sometimes conflicting, sometimes even contact the specialists themselves to find out what's going on. What should I call this? And yeah, one thing I've learned is the Boise area is surprisingly underbotanized. We tend to take the local flora for granted. Oh, we got better brush and sagebrush and balsam root and probably, it's pretty well known. It turns out though that although there's lots of springtime collections in the herbaria and others, local botanists seem to scatter to the high country as soon as they can. And so it's really been we take for granted what we have locally. And the fact that there hasn't been that many public trails until more recently, and even those are more concentrated in the foothills, it's still hard to really explore what's in the upper part of the Boise front. It's an ongoing thing. And as a result, the existing wildflower guides and lists are only a subset of what's actually present that I've been finding out there. And my current project is itself a long-term work in progress. Anyhow, major conclusion, the Boise area is special. This is because of its diverse geology. It's right where the Idaho batholith meets the Lake Idaho sediments, and then you have basalt flows coming in from the south as well. As a result, it's actually at the boundary of 3 floristic provinces, and you have to use 2 different floras to keep plants out locally. The flora of the Pacific Northwest and the flora of the Intermountain region, but you could also have it within the flora of the Rocky Mountains. There's a 5,000-foot elevation gradient going all the way from the shrub steppe and river bottomlands to conifer forest. So the result, a rich diversity of plants, maybe many of them previously underrecorded, including several unique and otherwise noteworthy species. Okay, the coverage that I'm using for this work, I decided I wanted maximum habitat diversity on publicly accessible trails within about an hour's drive of downtown Boise, both to encourage a sense of place and hopefully to minimize carbon footprint, to get out and find out you can do stuff. So pretty much Highway 55 Eagle Road to the west, Blacks Creek Road to the east, Cunamora Road. And this includes not only the Ridge to Rivers, but the Avamore Trails, Oregon Trail from Bonneville Point, Greenbelt residential areas, Hubbard and Blacks Creek Reservoir, and I have it divided into 8 biogeographic units. So the green belt includes the residential area north of Interstate 80, South Boise. I've recently decided going down to Cunamora. Oregon Trail is more of those upland plateaus. Lucky Peak. Foothills proper is up to where the Lake Idaho sediments are. I've decided to treat the Avamore and Hidden Springs Valley area on the other side of Daniel Creek as its own unit. Middle elevations is above the sediments of sediments of Lake Idaho and before you hit the conifer zone. And thanks to Martha Brabeck for doing maps. She's still working on this one. So how many do we have? You might have thought a few hundred. No, I've added, pushed it up over 1,000, still adding more as we go along. Less than 2/3 native, more than 1/3 non-native. Thing I like to focus on is the herbaceous. These are the ones I like the best, even though trees and grasses, woody things and grasses tend to get the most attention, especially in restoration areas. But this is where our greatest diversity is. And just to kind of run through some of the highlights, here's your best known rare plants: Aussie's onion, Mulford's milk vetch, Sacagawea bitterroot on the top, slick spot peppergrass over towards Eagle. And there's also some newly published ones. Here's the Boise sand verbena, published in 2016. I did that one. Jim Smith and Don Mansfield at College of Idaho and Boise State recently published Andrus's biscuit root. These have been known, but it's been shoehorned into something else. And they've done the work to say, oh, it's distinct. And there's still other plants. I like to use the phrase, they haven't read the book. You try to key them out. There's something wrong. There's no other name. And you kind of think, well, maybe these are other candidates for eventually needing their own name. There's this unusually small flowered little thing called a moon cup, which I've mostly just seen on Polecat Gulch. This little compact form of Western bladder pod. Should be on limestone. Instead, it's on granite along one tiny spot on Moores Mountain. This form of keys out best with Tolmie's onion, but doesn't quite fit. You can find it over north of Hidden Springs and also in East Foothills Preserve. And then the paintbrush on Schaefer Butte, the most common one there, you know, it kind of has the wrong color for one species, the wrong leaf for another, and I need the paintbrush people to look at it. A few other plants you're going to find around here that actually are on the Idaho rare plant list, but I don't think they've really made it too much, or at least they've been considered. I'm not totally sure on the status of all of these, but they're certainly ones that should be considered. The rabbit's foot milkvetch over near Lucky Peak, the Moisey milkvetch, common up on the Watchman Trail, Cusick's primrose down here in the foothills are only native primrose, true primrose. Even some hedgehog cats that's over towards Lucky Peak. And then there's a whole bunch of these things, locally rare. They don't have any state status, but if we really are interested in, you know, what all adds to our local diversity, these are the things that could easily disappear simply by not paying attention. Cusick's bluebell, found in up near Lucky, it's right near the Nordic Lodge if it hasn't already been bulldozed. Hairy swamp nettle I found above Diversion Dam. Purple sage, the only place it grows north of the Snake River Plains. It's common enough south, but this is their only population, none of it on protected land. Franklin sandwort, another sand endemic. Idaho, our little genus named after our state, used to be much more common, is now very hard to find because it means open space. Camas, there's only a few places you can find that locally. Minidoka penstemon, only down in Blacks Creek Reservoir. Rattlesnake plantain orchid could be, you know, wiped out by forest thinning if it's not paid attention to. And here's a list of things that are historically, there's records of them. I haven't been able to find them during the current period. Maybe, you know, they challenges for people to go look at. A lot of these would be up in the mid elevations. Also pay attention to special habitats like alkali flats, slick spots, South Alpine rock gardens, open sandy slopes. I mean, this is where most of our rarest plants live. But once the non-native annual grasses take over, it's no longer the same habitat and the neat stuff starts disappearing. Windswept ridge. So, you know, paying attention to all these diverse habitats is what supports the plants. Though, of course, the most important habitat is shrub staph, which when I was growing up here, it's what was, you know, the most common thing all over. It's becoming increasingly hard to find because it gets invaded by non-native annuals. And what you have is bunch grasses, scattered shrubs, lots of scattered wildflowers, and critically is all this open space in between them. Cryptogamic crust sometimes, or biotic crust it's called, but that's such a critical part of the functioning ecosystem and what provides the diversity of habitat for both the plants and the animals that depend on this. And the problem with things like cheatgrass is, and even bachelor buttons, these annuals fill in the gaps, and then they also carry fire more easily too. And I wanted to emphasize too that it's easy, you know, this, if you disturb it, turns into, you know, a monoculture of non-natives. This is easy. What is less understood is that restoration is, we're still working even if it's possible. very hard, very expensive. Best is not to disturb in the first place because it's lost. You've lost that diversity. Also thought it worth mentioning that the feral or cereal rye actually in the lower foothills is even worse than cheatgrass, and as well as being highly flammable. That's a thing that really needs more attention. Though I'd like to point out a possible creative solution, figure out how to make it out of it. Got to be a market. And part of what I've been finding with my thing isn't just finding all the exciting new, overlooked natives and saying, "Ooh, here's a pretty flower," but also taking note of what are the non-natives, that there's a steady reign of new non-natives, and some of them have invasive potential. The hardy Pampas grass is one that the Native Plant Society has targeted for this needs to no longer be sold. It's just too invasive locally. Patience dock, it looks like curly dock on steroids, and it's spreading like crazy. Along the green belt, dyer's broom. It's still small enough quantities it could be eliminated, but hasn't been. And European spindle tree is starting to be showing up all over the place. And these are just, I choose 4 because that's what I can put on. And just pointing out, I've got, instead of just breaking this into native and non-native, these are the number of plants, I've got a separate category. It's a subset of native of what's the sensitive. And this isn't just the ones that are listed rare, but things that are just going to be in a few places. And this number I need to boost up. I have to go through and decide which other things locally should be on it. Historic are the ones that we have records of, but I haven't currently confirmed are still here and may have already been lost. A lot of the things from the Spring Valley area, which is where Avamore is. Subsets of non-native, not all non-natives are invasive, that's a subset. I've also got a few persisting where, like lilac. Waifs are okay, I've seen a few plants, are they going to persist or are they just going to blip out? Planted category is a separate one. And just to try to explain, it's things that are often treated as native, but based on what I remember being present when I was growing up, where they're growing now are the only things I've found planted along trails or in areas where they're planting or other things aren't, as far as I can determine, none of these are originally native to the Boise Front. Their only presence here is because they've been planted. Four-winged shad scale, popular, included in seed mixes. Silver sagebrush I see in plantings. Palmer's penstemon, well established in a lot of places, native to the south of us. And it turns out what we think of as the Lewis's flax that's common in seed mixtures is actually the European perennial flax, and is a different species even from the one that's native. And the only place our native line of Lewisii grows is up in the conifer zone. Okay, and with all the threats going on, basically the flora seems under siege, which is why I've increasingly tied a lot of my work to activities to raise public awareness, giving talks and workshops for general audiences, developed a series of guided wildflower walks, I'll talk a bit more, initiated annual wildflower show with the Native Plant Society. We've now got an agreement to have this annually at the Idaho Botanical Garden on Mother's Day, and I hope that we get the the publicity out more and get people used to doing this. And all of these incorporate a Boise Front 101 interpretive overview, because I'd like to try to make people understand what's special about our place and get them to appreciate it. Okay, so the Wildflower Walk series that I developed several years ago is guided 1 to 3 hour walks, mostly after dinner, mostly about 2 to 3 miles long. It takes, when you're stopping and looking things, you can't do long walks. 2 and 3 miles is about what you can do with plant lists to hand out. And they were selected to introduce the maximum diversity of noteworthy plants and habitat types throughout the Boise Front and throughout the year. And they include not just the wildflowers, but natural and cultural history. So the complete series almost function as a Boise Front 101. Here's the ad that was in spring 2019 that got canceled during the pandemic. We were doing these through the Foothills Learning Center. Still kind of trying to get the publicity working on. But with the pandemic, I started working on converting them to self-guided versions. Here's the full list that we were doing. And they were timed again so that you could have them, you know, get the jump on spring as soon as buttercups started blooming, and used to just go to early July. I've added a self-guided one for Schaefer Loop that could be anytime during the summer. Okay, and these are all then converted, or the ones that are converted, done, are available as walks on this website, boisefrontnature.com. This is the website that started working on during the pandemic. Me working on the content, Bob Gabel and Paul Schaefer is the ongoing person who's actually making it work. And so here's what one of the converted self-guided walks looks like, or at least, you know, kind of the introduction to what it is, a little bit description. I'll give the list of what plants you see at different stretches. Also include some notes that I, you know, like I said, I try to get the whole picture of what's going on. This site is also where my flora is. Rather than publishing as seeing it as a book as primary thing, I figured I'll just go ahead and make it an online flora. And this is an example of one of the pages. It's not necessarily the most pretty looking yet. Been working more on the content and have it out. Paul's been having fun with this part, but it's the Latin name, a common name. This is what used to be known as Gray's biscuit root. Long story there. What family? It's native, it's herbaceous. We can add the flower color now. The distribution based on those 8 categories. And I'm mostly just trying to get the stuff that you can't find just anywhere. And instead I'll make links to other places if you want to find out more about this plant. And then what I want to do for everything, and I've just done this for a few so far, is have a discussion as well. Again, stuff that's specific to the Boise area. In this case, Phragmites is interesting because it's got 2 subspecies, Australis, which is considered invasive, but the native subspecies Americana isn't. And so trying to decide which one we have, it's still, they're hard to tell apart. I think we only have Americana, so we don't need to consider it invasive. Paul's also put together this lovely search page. So you can search for, you know, if you want to find out how many herbaceous plants with orange flowers found in the foothills, you know, you can do these various kinds of queries. Okay, current and future plans, future possibilities, still working on the species. As I said, this is a long-term work in progress. Add more photos, discussion, add front matter, so, you know, history, geology. I'd love to recruit additional collaborators to expand beyond vascular plants. Definitely want to complete the wildflower walk conversion. I'd also like to train some other volunteers, perhaps master naturalists, to resume picking up and leading the walks rather than me being the only one to do it. It would make more sense for me to train others. I think it'd be great to have some collaborators to develop some K-12 nature interpretive models, maybe based on some of these same areas. And also definitely want to expand the interactive citizen scientist with iNaturalist. I consider what I'm doing kind of the baseline, you know, specialist generated foundation that can then be, you know, supplemented with all the natural things. Here's an idea that I came up with early on too that I'd like to do eventually to try to encourage people to get out and appreciate the wildflowers more, is actually put points on each one and set up competitions to see who can come up with the most points. So something like airleaf balsam root, everybody can do that, 10 points. Idaho, if you find that, 250 points. Non-natives, 0 points. Guiding principle, this is me with my grandniece. Our future on this planet is dependent on whether we can transform a relationship from exploitation to stewardship. Business as usual is not an option. And acknowledge all the people who have helped allow this to happen. So happy to answer any questions. And thank you again for allowing me to present to you.
Thank you, Barbara. Does anybody have any questions? Native plant species. just for you all, if you're curious to register, if we are able to do the wildflower talks next spring or walks next spring, you can register through the guide.
Activity guide?
Yeah, our activity guide, because we are holding them at the Foothills Learning Center and
Cool.
partnering with Barbara, to make those available. And I'm glad to hear that you found a home at Iowa Botanical Garden. That's wonderful news.
Yeah. Now that we tried it last spring and it seemed to have worked very well. So outdoor space so we could social distance more, but even beyond the need for that. I'm still a little bit reluctant to offer the walk series myself. I just feel it would be a better use of my time. You know, I could leverage my, expertise by training other people to lead the walks. And then you could have a whole bunch more people be able to lead the walks. Because, it was less than 10, we put a cap of 20 on, and most of them never seemed to show, half of them never showed up. So it was fun to do, but it was, maybe my time would be better spent working on the website and getting more of the self-guided walks written too, but we'll see. And I could at least give a few, I'd be happy to actually give a walk to this group, for example, at some point. So if you guys would ever like to go out on one of these walks, that's another possibility to do. So
That's a great idea. Yeah, we'll get back in touch in the spring.
okay. I'm still out collecting aquatics at this time of year, but okay. Anything else?
No, it looks-
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, do you have to keep going?
Okay, well, I will leave and happy to answer further questions by email and other stuff too. So long.
Great.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Barbara. She does know her plans.
She knows her plans. She knows her plans.
That is dedication.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, I mean, the Jeff Center Berkeley was like the Smithsonian for plants, it's the upper echelon of botany.
Where was this located?
It's at UC Berkeley.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to give a conservation criteria subcommittee update since you were at that meeting? Do you feel like you would like to?
I think you could actually do a better combination.
It's called passing the buck.
She's a good professional.
Okay, so, hello everyone again. We did have a subcommittee meeting just Monday to discuss the impending update and revisions associated with the conservation criteria, guiding your assessment on improvement projects or partnership projects, I believe they're called. I think we had a good conversation. I brought to the group a spreadsheet, which, don't mind if I do. But the spreadsheet I'd gone through all of the plans that we had discussed, and I think Chloe sent out all of the links to those plans. And I pulled out the goals from each that overlap with the work that you all are doing, which is directed specifically by the levy language. And so we had a discussion about how those different goals should be or could be addressed, I guess I should say, within the framework of the potential partnership projects. We talked about pathways, we talked about climate, we talked about science. And again, just to remind you, the whole purpose here is to make sure that the work that you all are doing to evaluate potential funding for public benefit projects is informed by and reflective of the public feedback that we're getting with regard to this work, and the public feedback that we're getting with regard to larger and different efforts that the city is doing that may relate. So that was one of the things that I kept coming back to, and I think the group kept coming back to in our discussions at the subcommittee level was, yes, there's a climate action roadmap, and it does have some goals that relate to the work that we're doing. And, there's some questions on whether or not people expected when they voted for the levy to have climate be a part of the discussion. And, I think our thinking at the end of the day is These plans are community vetted and often community driven, and they're definitely driven by our policymakers. So we need to make sure that we're at least addressing these different goals from different plans that relate to the levy in our analysis. So my job now is to go back and draft up new conservation criteria that has been informed by that discussion. And then I will bring that back to the subcommittee for revision, edit, further discussion, and then we will bring it to the full committee for discussion and hopefully, you know, a vote on whether or not you're comfortable adopting the new criteria. And then moving forward, that would be, you know, the expectation we would put on applicants would be to address things like, you know, how does your pathways proposal directly relate to the language in the levy that says, you know, it can be used for enhanced recreational opportunities and trails. Or for example, how does your carbon capture or your, you know, shrub planting project improve the city's efforts to, sorry, do you get that where your ear starts ringing? It's very distracting. Improve the city's efforts to enhance wildlife habitat and native plant species. So that we're making sure that if we're getting applications that are more broad, maybe outside of what we're used to, that we're still tying it back to what those levy funds should be used for. And I think ultimately it's a really good thing because we haven't been getting a lot of applications, if you haven't noticed. And I think part of it is because folks are pretty narrowly, you know, focused on restoration projects that put plants in the dirt and, you know, projects that might help build a new trail or build a new connection. And I think it is good for us to open it up and start to think about how these funds can be put to good use, as long as it's within that core mission statement, as Committee Member Pryor said. We're not changing our mission statement, but we are trying to look more broadly across the city about how we can put this money to good use. So more to come. If you haven't had a chance to look through those plans, even if you're not doing it with a highlighter and a fine-tooth comb, please do. I think it will help inform our discussions moving forward and help you understand how things, you know, efforts across the city are sort of aligning with regard to conservation and environmental improvement. So I think it's good for us to be able to describe how that alignment is occurring and thread it into our decision making. That's all I've got. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. Anything anybody on that subcommittee would like to add, feel free. Scott was there, Patty was there. Guys, shake
Yeah, I think just that it is gonna take some open-mindedness, I guess, to what we've traditionally done, or thought about doing. And so just opening up the opportunities is the goal of this subcommittee, right? To get the money out the door, because it's not going out the door, and it's gonna look bad if it hasn't already, that it's just sitting there collecting no interest. And you know, hopefully this will open up new opportunities, and there'll be some, I predict that there'll be probably some pushback if we can pull some of these projects off, although they meet the criteria. That's not what most people think this money is for. And especially if it's a project that could arguably be used for general funds or green up funds from a park or something like that. You know, yeah, it could be used, you know, but we don't have those funds available now and don't know when they will be available. So let's put this other money to good use that does follow the criteria of the levy. I think it's good, definitely good initiative for us to be doing.
Thank you. All right. If we're ready to move on, I can. Just go down, I'm so sorry. Okay, I did have a couple of other updates. If it's all right with you, Mr. Chair, if I just continue. So the pilot, pilot trail management program, our survey ended last Wednesday, a week ago today. We had about 2,500 responses, which is great. Super good. For those of you who have no context, that's like really good engagement. When we do other city surveys, they don't get that much engagement. It's very hard to get that. So our users are passionate, they're engaged, they want us to hear their voice, and we are providing them with opportunities to do so. So we've been going through that data these last few days. We had a statistician look at the raw data and help us kind of look under the hood a little bit, like, yes, you have this percentage of support, how does that break out by user group, for example. So we are gonna be going, it sounds like, into work session with council on Tuesday to daylight the results. We will make all of that information available to the public. The whole goal of this effort to try and change management strategies on certain trails has been led by the public, driven by their feedback. And we did our best to make a transparent and accessible process. It was great work by the team. I mean, it took a team for sure. So long story short, if you'd like to tune in to that work session, we can send out the Zoom link so you can listen in. And we will be providing all of the responses and comments and assessment to the public through the website next week. Is there anything you want to add?
No, Mr. President, just that it's at 4 o'clock-ish. We'll give a time on that in the next couple of days, but it would be great for anyone who could tune in to get an update on that. Sarah will be providing that to the mayor and council, and we'll be looking for either affirmation of the plan being adopted moving forward, or an actual potential vote by the council to adopt the plan moving forward. And the plan is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
So it's basically, it's been working. And I just would echo what Superintendent Arkell said, that it was a team effort, but this has been a very, very thorough, engaging process. And, you know, from the very first survey that was done, I believe in February or March, to this last one, and then we monitored in between feedback weekly from our users. And so we've used all that to create this database that really does demonstrate it worked. The engagement worked, the trial pilot worked. And so we believe now to move forward with what we've been doing to continue to do that. And there'll be some alterations with the poll count loop that we'll be looking at doing. And again, that was based on feedback from our users. But overall, it was very successful. And so, we're anxious to get that done and move on, and then kind of see what our next plans are. I wanted to back up just what I really appreciate what committee member Raver said about the subcommittee work on the criteria, looking at adjusting the criteria. And I think it's important that we continue to be very good stewards of that funding, of that levy money. But I think the point to be made is we do need to figure out ways to get more of this money out into projects in the community. And so I think your work as a subcommittee on looking at that criteria with Sarah is really important right now, so that we can broaden the scope a little bit. And it's probably not gonna change a lot, but I'm hoping there's enough of a tweak that we can create some more interest in the community for more clean water opportunities. Because I know the council's looking at that fund and just kind of wanting us to get it into the community. And so, but still be good stewards of the money. We're not going to be, picking projects that don't fit the criteria, obviously, or that we can't support, and we feel that the mayor and council can't support. But I appreciate committee member Raver's comments that this is a good move to try to see if we can enhance some of the opportunities out there. So, and use you folks. So committee members, as you know, people in the community that might have projects out there, let's get applications and get them in here. So if you're familiar with what it could be, neighborhood associations, it could be nonprofit organizations, If you're familiar with anyone that is even thinking about doing a project you believe would qualify, get it to Sarah and she could qualify it in 5 minutes, whether it really does fit the criteria. And if it does, walk people through getting that organization, getting an application in to us so that we can get some of this money out in the community.
Great. Any questions on the subcommittee work?
Yeah, I do. At one time, we talked about helping fund a multi-city analysis of the clean water projects that could benefit the Boise River. Is there have you guys thought about that at all? Is it something we should revisit?
Yes, that is a great question, and we are trying to drum some work up with Ada County as our upstream neighbor, because they have a lot of potential in the Barber Pools area. And actually almost had a complete application to bring to you, but the county wasn't ready to take it forward. So even though I don't always have applications for you, there's always conversations going on. Right now, we are talking with the city of Kuna, Ada County, and a number of other stakeholders, fishing game, to put together an improvement project concept for Hubbard Reservoir. Although that's not along the Boise River, as you say, but it is trying to work across those jurisdictional boundaries can sometimes be a little challenging, but I think we're gaining headway with a couple of these projects. Just takes some time. So yes and no, I guess, is the answer. You know, it's kind of on a project by project basis and at the whims of other jurisdictional priorities.
Does the Corps of Engineers essentially, do they evaluate the cleanliness of the Boise River?
The Corps of Engineers put together, I think 5 years ago, a stewardship plan for the Boise River that we're still utilizing along the portions that the city manages to help identify and manage invasive species, for example. The Department of Environmental Quality is the agency that tests the water quality in the Boise River and then holds permit holders accountable for pollution and effluent and that sort of thing. So it's a multi-agency, another multi-agency.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe we'd be recreating something that's already out there.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, it's just implementing kind of some of the recommendations and studies that have already been done.
There's studies that suggest
Yeah.
potential projects. Why don't we visit with them?
Yeah.
And see if we can use some of this money.
That's a great idea.
Get some of those off square one.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I think committee member Nowacki had a question.
Yeah, I'm new and only my second meeting, but I just wanted to ask if historically, have we been turning down very many applications or have we just not had a lot of interest? It sounds like we have a decent amount of money left, which is great, but I guess I was just wondering if people have been, not as excited to put in applications because people have been turned down or what that has looked like in the past.
That's a great question, committee member Nowacki. So the first year in 2017, when we got applications, we received 9 of them. And just given the kind of narrow scope of our criteria and our requirements, we moved 2 applications forward, both of which were approved by council, both of which have run into significant barriers and have not gotten off the ground. And since then, we've gotten 1 to 3 applications over the past 4 or 5 years each year. And I think we have moved 2 forward, the wildlife overpass project that we are participating in between here and Idaho City, and then the Golden Eagle Audubon Society project that you were all just recently hearing about. I think that's it.
The Cottonwood Creek daylighting.
That one and Intermountain Bird Observatory, both of those have hit kind of significant barriers.
Yeah.
We have about $8 million left. And I think, we've been very fortunate in having been able to acquire property at good rate, good values. So I don't want there to be, any sort of perspective that we have been idle with that 2 million. hundreds of acres have been protected in that time. And we have, moved some projects forward. But it's hard to meet the criteria as it's written. And you have to have projects that are owned on land that is either owned or managed by a public agency. So some of the projects that the committee did not want to move forward on were on city property and felt like general fund monies should be used to fulfill those project applications. So there is a good, committee member Raber brings up a good point that there is going to be an ongoing conversation about what fund is appropriate for what project. And I think it's okay for us to have that conversation and not agree all the time, because I think council's going to be doing the same thing. And that's a good reminder that, we're going to have these vetting processes and these recommendations that we move forward to council, but ultimately they're the ones who make the decision and are responsible for the expenditure of that money. So I hope that answers your question.
And then there was one project that we recommended that council turned down too, at least
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
at one over by the park on the east end.
Yeah, the Boise River Enhancement Network project? Or?
No, that property that Arboretum goes
Oh,
adjacent
it
to
was
the park.
your, Mr. that passed away.
Like a nap?
Oh, yeah, yes,
With the deer.
yeah, with the deer,
Yeah.
we saw 2 nice bucks, Scott and I over there. Yes, yeah, they did turn that down, that's a great, I'm glad you brought that, Pete, because
I
that's
thought that
true.
was a great project.
Yes,
Yeah,
and we
it was
got
a
turned
great
down.
project, we got turned down,
And now it is the homes.
and now it's home, yeah, it's homes.
So,
On our website, we probably ought to add the projects that have been acquired, the properties that have been acquired.
oh, okay.
Because right now, if you look on our website, it looks like we have one stalled project and one $40,000 project.
Yeah, I think that's good feedback to list them and then provide the links, because once we acquire them, they get like looped into our reserve website and don't get acknowledged, so I will make sure
Yeah,
that.
that's a great idea.
I think you have another question, Mr. President.
Okay. Is there another question?
Michelle.
Michelle?
I have one. If you don't mind, I thought about this other project we had. It was Boise State, and they were gonna improve the river area with boardwalks and stuff. And we really liked that project, but it just seemed like they weren't really prepared in their application. And I was wondering if we might see that one again.
Yeah, there was 2 actually, so there was the latest one that
Yes,
this
that
committee
they
didn't
will see
like.
again.
That they're,
Yes.
hopefully they're gonna come back
They are gonna
at some
come back,
point.
yeah.
And then I think what Michelle's talking about is members, right at the beginning.
Oh, yeah, the access.
Yeah, and it just,
Yeah.
it didn't go any further.
Beachfront.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that was it.
I
Yeah.
think next year, obviously COVID had stalled.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
do think next year there'll be a number of improvement projects coming our way to look through, hopefully. So, but I do think this update of the criteria is very timely, not only because we have, newer committee members, and newer policies that we need to incorporate, but also because we're coming out of this weird time when people are thinking again about how to initiate things.
Okay, thanks.
Just a couple other updates. Oh, sorry.
I have a quick question. This is kind of really big picture, but it always kind of bothers me that I hear all these ads on public radio and signs that all the drainage from all the streets goes straight into the river, essentially, or into a tributary. Do any other cities do it differently, or is there a way to, I know you can't really probably process that water, but are there any solutions? Because that seems like a lot of crap going into the river, literally and
It
figuratively.
is, yeah.
Salt, oils, I mean,
Yeah.
Isn't it just the overflow that goes directly into the rivers? Doesn't the first bit of it?
We
get
could,
treated?
and if Sarah wants to address it, or another committee member, but we could also have someone from our public
Yeah.
works team come and have that conversation and talk about how they're treating water,
Absolutely.
the wastewater coming in. But I'm glad you brought it up, Pete, because, Mr. President, commission members, is that part of the issues we were having with Esther Simplot Pond, particularly Pond 1, is the Crane Creek drainage runs adjacent to that pond. And it is the highest E. coli bacteria infested body of water in that whole area. And our public works team is pretty convinced that that has had a dramatic effect on Esther Simplot, and it's going straight to the river. And I'm told it's gathering runoff from like 20 different areas that go into that small creek. And so, you know, we talked about when we were talking about Cottonwood Creek, is that potentially a project that could come forward to this committee to look at putting some funding in to clean up that Crane Creek before it discharges into the river. And so we haven't talked about it internally much, except with a couple of our public works teams. So it's a great example, though, of all that runoff going into Crane Creek, which I'm, again, not an expert on that, other than being told it's like 20 different sources of all kinds of really bad stuff ending up in there. And I can attest to the fact it's the highest E. coli water source we have in that area. And so
It runs through my backyard.
does it?
So we gotta go to Matt.
It's all.
So Matt, what are you doing to Crane Creek?
Well, part of it is that, you know, you got the golf course sitting right there.
That's mostly phosphorus and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's
like
phosphorus.
that. It's
Yeah.
But I guess it just as it moves along, it's picking up a lot of mainly runoff. It's
Yeah.
what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
And so
I don't think, you know, when they put that creek underground, a lot of it was, you know, back in 1900, they didn't really plan, they probably drained right into it.
yeah, I think that there is opportunities with a lot of drainages, and I don't know, Sarah, I don't want to steal any of the rest of it you got, but Cottonwood Creek, if you wanted to give an update,
Yes.
if we wanted to give an update on if that's part of your update, I think it's timely.
I totally agree.
It's dead.
Yes, it's no longer moving forward. The barriers of, you know, the high price of construction, not having the funding to do it. And then we sort of found out very recently that we didn't have support from the family that donated the park to do the project. So it was just kind of stacked on top of each other, problems that we had no solutions for, and neither did the partners. So unfortunately, that project is not moving forward. We do have, you know, the construction documents should our partners find $1.3 million to.
And a design. The
And a
design
design.
was a problem. It was gonna take out a lot of trees and healthy trees, large, 100-year plus trees in Julia Davis Park. And so, and in the end, I think the way it was characterized is the cost associated didn't provide the benefit that we would like to see at the end of the day. It would only have water in it maybe 5 weeks a year, and other than that, it'd be dry. And there was no guarantee that the fish habitat would actually, be enhanced with during that 5-week period. So there were a lot of issues that we couldn't get answers for. And as Sarah mentioned, and the family just wasn't hip on the design. When it finally was completed by the engineering firm, it was large. It was in some areas 70 feet wide and more than 10 feet deep.
Oh, geez.
And it had to be constructed that way because at the peak runoff, it's 200 CFS that would come through the canal. So you had to build it like that concept, a church parking lot for Easter Sunday. You're building this canal to handle 200 CFS, and then the rest of the year it's empty. And so they couldn't really give a guarantee that even spawning activity was going to occur. And so the family just said, we don't think this is a good idea, but they don't have the final say, we do. And we felt like it was time to move on. This has been dragging on for quite some time. And
Yeah.
anyway, sorry, Sarah.
No, don't apologize. That was all very helpful.
So who can we get to submit an application to clean up Crane Creek?
It could be a city application.
Yeah, and I think that's, I put some feelers out this week, just try and start some conversations related to it. So hopefully I'll be able to meet with some of our public works team and see what opportunities there might be. But in answer to your question about stormwater, really, one of the great things you can do is create wetlands and, provide opportunities for sedimentation and the natural cleanup of that runoff. So I don't know what the solution will be for Crane Creek. It'll depend on kind of ownership along its alignment and, you know, what we're able to do and where, so. Just moving real quick on to a couple of updates. We did close on the Horizon Hills property on Monday, last Monday. And so that's very exciting. Congratulations, you're now the owners of 29 more acres of open space in an area of the foothills that we have no holdings.
Is this Pursley's?
This is the
Yes.
Berkeley property, yes. And the timing worked out such that, you know, we had always talked about how this project was important because folks want us to connect Polecat to Siemens Gulch. And there's a bunch of trails in there that are not protected for public access. The Pursley family generously sold this property to us at a significant discount so that we could start to build relationships with neighboring property owners, go through the planning process if any of those properties should be developed, to start to formalize public access, connectivity, and open space in the the western foothills of Boise. So this is good stuff. Yeah, we closed on October 25th. And finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about Hopkins Range Reserve. So I think I told you last time we met that the construction of the trail had begun and that we are designing the trailhead right now. I expect that we will be bringing an improvement project application to you with relation to Hopkins because the grant funds that we have and the city's capital matching funds are not enough to complete the project. So without any additional capital funds, which there is none, we will either have to put this project on hold or find alternative funding sources. And given that we are now going through this criteria, you know, enhanced recreational opportunities and trails is one of our you know, mission statements, I should say. So it might be slightly awkward, but I am going to be bringing that to you.
I don't think that's
discussion.
awkward.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. President. I don't think it's awkward at all. And so, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
That's one that will be coming forth hopefully in the next month. I'm expecting to get a design of the new trailhead in the next 2 weeks. And our trail contractor just quit because he doesn't feel like he can complete the project without losing money. So we're gonna have to go out to bid. So I will tell you more as I learn more. I think that was it on my
Sarah,
updates. Yes.
In general, what's that trailhead gonna be like, just, or do we even know yet before we get these signs?
Yeah, I can give you a,
Paved
picture this, close your eyes.
Okay.
So you know where Hopkins Range Reserve is, it's 400 acres. 3 property owners sold to us to compile this acreage in 2015, 2016.
Just as a refresher for everyone, it's up Bogus Basin Road, right?
Yes, it's up Bogus Basin Road, north of the Dry Creek pullout. I think the best way to describe it is as you're driving up Bogus Basin Road and you see that big, beautiful modern house that's on the left side of the street with the solar panels and the big rock and the metal gate. It is, the property is below that house. We have an access through an Idaho Power Access Road and with an easement with a neighboring property owner, and we will be using an existing access point off of Bogus Basin to enhance a drive that will bring you to a grove of junipers and trees. And our hope is to create a trailhead parking there. And then also like picnic area, because it is such a cool spot.
It is, a good, yeah.
It's the old homestead site for the Hopkins family. There used to be a hunting lodge, well, it's like a hunting cabin there, and we demolished it in 2019. And so there's even a potential maybe for some water, because there's a well. I need to figure out if it is still producing, you know, water, but it's a neat spot. I think ultimately the design for the trailhead might be really something to be proud of, because it'll also be a destination, you know, to go up and have a picnic with the family, so.
And the trail will be,
Hopkins Loop is going to be a directional trail, and it'll be about 6 miles. We heard so much feedback through this pilot management program that that's a lot for most people. and not everybody wants to go on a 6-mile hike, which I can contest to because I have a 9-year-old. So we're also going to be developing a connection so that folks can have a smaller recreational opportunity that's more accessible. Yeah, exactly, just like
That
the,
works well.
so. Yeah, so that was all the updates I have. We don't have executive session today. I'm happy to answer any questions. But next month, in December, we will hopefully, if there's time, I'm happy to bring in our stormwater folks and we can talk about Crane Creek and some opportunities there.
Because the city just voted to allow them to realign Crane Creek down on 19th Street between Ada and Sherman, realigning the creek itself.
Oh,
It's important.
ACHE?
No, the city allowed the canal district to realign,
Oh, okay.
because these people bought up this whole half the block and they're gonna put in this mega mansion.
Oh, wow.
It's quite a controversy.
Okay.
That was the only portion of the Crane Creek daylighting in that part of North End that are already been daylighted. So it's in the 700 block of 19th Street.
Okay.
So I used to live across the street,
Oh, interesting.
so.
Well, thanks for telling me that. All right, well, thank you, everyone.
Got a motion to move to.
Yes, we need a motion to go out to session.
I'm making a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.